let's start off with the one that I think to me is making the biggest impression on me. It's gonna be the Snyderverse Batflick from BVS. This thing's looking kind of beautiful. I gotta be honest, this thing, it's legit looking like a shrunken down Hot Toys of Batflick, which is no easy feat. I know that that's a big, big thing to say, but just looking at that head sculpt, I'm like, yeah, I think Lpzz's got it. The only thing that looks like it was a little unchanged from that initial work print prototype from a few years back, prior to the delays that we did cover a little while ago regarding the departure of the lead designer and how that turned into a little bit of a shakeup. It looks like they didn't, it looks like they didn't let any of those shakeups over at the company deter from the final product, because so far we got this updated look at the Batflick. There's a part of me that kind of wishes that he would have been donning the actual cowl sculpt, but at the same time, if you really want to sell and get people to stop when they're kind of going through this display, I guess you would want to see how the Batflick sculpt is going to look like on the body. And furthermore, gives them an ample excuse to hold the empty cowl hand right there, which something tells me that looks pre-sculpted, which means it's going to be like the hand is sculpted with the mask, considering that the mask has that pulled sort of effect that looks beautifully sculpted. Yeah, I'm really digging this. Then over here, we do have a very early and admittedly kind of rough prototype of the Absolute Catwoman. Which I think maybe with some paint decals will work a little bit better. But right now, I got to be honest, the initial prototype is not doing too much for me, though getting incredibly charmed by the automatopoeia effect over here with the gun saying top, 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 top. This is another one that stopped me, not only because we already knew that they were doing their own Arkham Knight Joker, but guys, it's fully painted and articulated. It's painted and articulated, so it kind of begs the question, how far off are we from seeing this guy in hand? Considering how fast the turnaround was for Arkham Knight, and even while they're still releasing batches of the Arkham Knight, pre-orders already went live for the Catwoman. I'm definitely getting a vibe, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but I'm getting a vibe that they kind of relayed this message of like all hands on deck for the Arkham Knight series. And instead of separating all of our thoughts and all of our processes and all of our workflow in different directions, just do Arkham Knight right now, finish that line, and then we're moving on to Hush. And then probably after that, they would have moved into New 52, but unfortunately that got canceled. So the fact that this is painted, it's in terms of like the paint apps, beautiful. Sculpt is 80% there. And let me tell you why I say 80%. Because on the subjective side, it is a little unfortunate that it's the Arkham Knight Joker, which means that his face does have, this picture does confirm that the face has that much, I don't want to say realistic, but that much more softer look and less villainous. I don't know what it is, but something, if you look closely, something is different about Joker's face in Arkham Knight versus his appearances in either Asylum or City. And I'm not the biggest fan of it. Between all those looks, my preferred look is how he looked in either Asylum or City. The only difference between those two is that he looks sick in City. But in terms of like his bone structure and his actual aesthetic, it's pretty much one-to-one, the same. Whereas in Arkham Knight, you look at his face and there's something just a little softer and more like, woe is me kind of look. And the face sculpt is the same, and it's evoking that. That's not a harp on UPF, it's just the design, because it's supposed to be the Arkham Knight version, so they had to go with that. Now, what will be some criticism on UPF from a technical objective point of view is some of the parting for the articulation. CM Brock, you mentioned they have to fix the knees. I personally don't really have a problem with the knees. I have a problem with the torso, though. Something about the segmentation of the torso here and then this wide span of a chest plate does look a little off. He looks, if anything, he looks like he's a little too buff to be Joker. The limbs don't look too bad, but even the limbs I feel could be a couple of degrees, like fractions of millimeters stripped down. The joints, like I said, don't really bug me as much as in regards to like the knees or even the elbows, except for the chest. Whatever he's got going on right here in the middle where the vest meets, that looks weird. It looks like maybe it's separating on the coat here on the right. But if they can't overhaul the tooling of how this is assembled, then the only thing I ask is that per the pieces, we slim him down a little bit because he's a little bit too jacked. This is, I believe, the Batman Beyond suit from Arkham Knight. So it's doing that. They did that weird thing where it's supposed to be like a Batman Beyond influenced suit, but it doesn't actually look like Batman Beyond Batman. It still has the tactical stuff. He's got like a covered up mask. So it's almost like they took the Arkhamverse and said, what would it look like if this Batman made his Batman Beyond suit, but still within this universe? And that's pretty much the skin that you have in the game, and they're making a figure out of it. And this figure, he's a little bit cramped up to be in this dynamic pose, so he doesn't have like a neutral pose to him. I kind of wish that maybe this, the flight pose would have been in a neutral state, and then we can have this one be the action superhero landing one. That way we can have a look at both looks. But from what I can tell, they might have given him some better proportions than that initial prototype from a little while back. So he's looking a little better. And then we have this white shot that I did see a little bit before. Why did this get circled, I wonder? But in this white shot, there's the Red Death, the Batman Who Laughs we've gotten before. What is this? In between Batman Who Laughs and Red Death, what is that? There's that Joker again, and then a big one for some people, the Dawnbreaker. As Brian pointed out here, the Dawnbreaker looks phenomenal. Those green tendrils shooting ground floored me. Absolute Batman. Absolutely yoked. We do have two looks here, so that's pretty interesting. I guess you would argue that the look on the right is the more definitive version versus the one on the left that's going to come with that buzzsaw. And the mask, very similar to that render that we saw from McFarlane, which I think, if anything, kind of confirms that what you see before you hear, a lot of toy companies are going to do. I'm starting to get the vibe that either DC or WB said, hey, these are the two looks you got, make figures. And that's it. Because I do think it's pretty curious that these are the two that McFarlane might make. Those McFarlane Absolute Trinity renders got out, but the one for Batman is the very specific one with the mask and the buzzsaw. And that's also what we got here from UPF. So I'm like, I think this is a less McFarlane, less UPF thing and more of a WBDC thing. That they're saying, you gotta make this look. I don't know why it's so important about this look, but I guess. Thankfully, if that means that we get our default definitive edition over here with the axe and the proper bat symbol and the scaling, combined with this rather dope base right here with the Absolute Batman logo there on the front, fine. At least we got the choice. The choice feels a little bit more paywalled with McFarlane because this version's going to get the standard edition, but this is going to get locked behind Elite Edition, so the scumminess starts to come in there. But unless we're a fly in the wall in those discussions during the meetings, it could have been McFarlane or it could have been DC. Same way that DC said that Joaquin Phoenix Joker set needed to be $250. The only perspective that I pointed the figure at McFarlane is saying that they still did take the deal. Did they dictate the price? No, that was definitely WB. That was definitely DC. Could they have said also, no, we're not making that and just keep our optics as clean as possible? Yeah, they also could have done that. This angle right here looks a little cleaner, a little bit more punched in. So I'm liking the cape, the tendrils there. And we do have a little bit of cutting for the articulation. I also find interesting that it looks like the spikes might be modular, since this image shows all the spikes on the shoulder, but then when we cut back to this one, it's only on one. And it just dawned on me, this actually, yo, if these are modular, then I think this head is too with the mask, which means that this is the same figure. Because now I'm looking at the cape and I'm like, wait a minute. Is this the same? Have I been talking out of my ass this entire time? Is this the same figure? And this is just to demonstrate all the other accessories it's going to come with? Instead of paywalling like McFarlane has to? And from this angle, you can see that the base is probably going to have that same accessory storing mechanic, because it looks like it separates right there, and it's got that little like piece from the back right there where the arm is going to plug into. But if this is both the same figure and they're just dressing it up with a different head and the buzzsaw, and then this one comes with the modular spikes, this one has the lesser spikes, yeah. The only little concern I have, and it's not even that big of a concern because it comes with a territory, is that if this guy's massive and has just as much modulability, if that's even a phrase, as it's being demonstrated here, based on this prototype, don't be that surprised if we do kiss the little butt surface that is the triple-digit price. I think this might be the first $100 or $100 plus UPF figure. And when I say $100, I mean MSRP, prior to the shipping, prior to the tariffs, whatever fees gets lumped in depending on who you purchase it from. I'm talking about base MSRP. I think this might be the first base MSRP $100 UPF figure. We also have an unmasked Catwoman that I do think is much more impressive looking than that other one. Though I don't know how I feel about the separation of the... It's giving that SH Figure Arts Psylocke vibes right here. We'll see. Early prototype. It is articulated, but I have to read more into Absolute Batman to see exactly how she looks like in the comics, apart from the cover that was being hyped up a few months ago. Another big one. One that, word on the street, is becoming... It could be just around the corner. Pattinson Batman. Because this one, not only is it fully painted, but also looks articulated. Very similar to that, what was it, the Arkham Knight Joker. And this one did get a little bit of a tease reveal alongside Catwoman. Now, Catwoman ended up being, and when I say tease reveal, I'm talking about official tease reveals directly from the company UPF Lpzz proper, from their Instagram accounts. So not some placeholder page on Bombasby or anything like that, because I think everybody's finally waking up to the fact that when Bombasby or 5K Toys or Wanted Toys put up those pages where you could already put down a $5 pre-order, but UPF and Lpzz directly through Instagram or RentNote or whatever don't say anything, don't pre-order until there's an official like pre-order launch by UPF. Don't pre-order, because things could go sideways, and then we end up with a bunch of Arkham Knight cancellations through Bombasby because they overpromised or overbooked, over pre-ordered. So we do have a bit of a formal official tease from UPF for this guy alongside Catwoman, but Catwoman was the only one that went out for pre-order. Could he be following suit? So overall, I think I like the suit. I do. It might be a little light on the shade for the graininess of the middle torso and limbs, but apart from that, face sculpt looks nice. Cape looks nice. I'm digging this rafter looking base from the climax. Face sculpt is not bad, but it's also not the greatest, if I'm being honest. The chin, it's almost, you know what? That's what it is. Bottom half of the face is perfect. Eyes and above need a little bit of work, UPF. So if I could add just another note of feedback before we hit mass production, I think we need to work a little bit on the brow and the eyes. And maybe the mouth, because this is looking a little too like this, a little too gruff, a little too mongoloid, because I think it's because his lips look a little puffier, and I'm sorry, but Robert Pattinson fits the bill as far as your stereotypical Englishman of having no lip. He's got the chin. Very angled chin. But yeah, I think it's almost there. but it does need a little bit of work. A couple more Arkham-related material, but this time, not Arkham Knight. Instead, it is... Actually, no. False flag. We do have one more Arkham Knight look. One that I heard was actually put on ice, but it looks like momentum has picked up and they're moving the project forward again. Yes, look, some people in the comment section are saying, hey, I thought they canceled this. No, I remember Killzone on Kaiju Daddy's stream said that this was put on hold, but it wasn't formally canceled. It looks like they're ramping it up again in terms of the project. Arkham Knight Red Hood. So basically how he looked like in the DLC. A little difficult to go by because it looks like it's very early prototypes. Again, it looks like they literally just defrosted it and put it up on this display. But doesn't inherently look bad. I like some of the texture work happening on the jacket that looks kind of lived in. And then throwing it back a little further to Arkham City. Arkham City Batman, which is blatantly Arkham City, judging by these gauntlets right here. Kind of wish, again, he was in neutral pose and not just the superhero landing pose. But unfortunately, that's all we can really work with right now. Also in this picture, the Nightwing, which is actually the Arkham Knight Nightwing, not City. But this is the one that I believe old Bruce, the designer that left UPF, was working on it before his departure. But it looks like it's a project that they're still maintaining in the docket, so that's good to see. Tactical suit Batman. So not only are we getting that Batfleck, you can actually see a little bit more of the cowl sculpt here on the side. But then staying within the Snyderverse, tactical suit Batman. Now somebody pointed out... Ooh. So that explains it. Okay. According to Spicy Psyduck, he may be talking to some people on the ground floor over there during the event. But somebody pointed out here that this is what the tactical suit looked like in 2024. The suit looks pretty good, but the head sculpt, it does look like it needs some work. And then Spicy Psyduck responded by saying pretty much everything from the 2024 showcase were scrapped and redone. A little early to tell because, again, this is one of those maquette-style prototypes to just kind of pitch it. Yeah, a little early to tell. I understand that the vibes are trying to go for the tactical suit, but I can't really tell from this because it looks like there's some areas that are very, very overly smooth for it to be the tactical suit, but it makes sense because it's a very early prototype. And then, as mentioned in that wide shot, there was that showing of the Dawnbreaker. However, to kind of exemplify that prior photo of Tactical Suit Batman, does look like an awful lot of the figure was overhauled. You can see right here that it's pretty different. And I hate to say it, but I think the 2024 one looked a little better. Hopefully the paintwork will carry a little bit more, but yeah, I like the intricacies of this mesh material. The little linings here, the middle torso here looks much more in depth. Granted, I think the symbol on his chest looks a little better on the newer one, and I like the head being a little bit more narrower because it looks like Dawnbreaker as opposed to the much more girthy version of the new one. But we'll see. But so far, I gotta be honest, I actually like the original. Yeah, look, somebody else is saying it. I'm liking the prototype on the right better. But, you know, the new one is more accurate, plus the older one is probably more expensive to make, given the extra details. Yeah. It's one of those, it is what it is situations, where a lot has happened in the past 2 years. Like I said, some lead developers and lead designers leaving, and cost of making figures going up. At least, like I said, there's sections here that leave things looking pretty impressive. And amongst them is also some of the Hush stuff, which finally gives us a colored Hush Batman, which kind of begs the question if this is yet another release that is just around the corner, because he's looking pretty complete. Now, so far, I like that we're kind of getting some better coverage of what was shown during the Kaiju Daddy Killzone stream, because we got the two bases right here. The cape, which looks very quality, but at the same time, I'm a little nervous it might be overly long, which I get it. It's the Jim Lee inspired look, but at the same time, I'm like, how many times are we going to do this look? Hopefully there's something within the quality of the plastic, because like I said, it looks good, Is there anything here that makes me go, yo, this is going to be better than the Mafex? Maybe the shading of the musculature for the body? But apart from that, I think it's one of those things that we're just going to have to wait and see until it's in hand. And then maybe this, like, the Hush accessory with the half-covered face, it looks like it's going for a very realistic approach to the bandages. Okay, the buckle work is actually pretty nice on the utility belt. And does it look like it opens? That looks like a hinge. Functionable utility belt? The wrinkling on the abs right there is pretty nice. Vein work? Alright, never mind. It's... Oh, god damn it. I was over here thinking that, I'm like, what is separated from Mafex? Oh. Oh. Never mind. And like I said, the texture work on the bases are pretty nice. Another look right there, although this one gets a little blurrier. Closer look at the dynamic one with the grimacing face. I don't know how I feel about the nose. The nose looks just a little peculiar. But I do like the half moon accessory to make it look dynamic, like it's flying, like in the comics. There's that red hood again. So just imagine this thing painted. But if anything, the detail that impresses me the most is the little bit of padding right here in the hood. Because those clothing materials are kind of difficult to execute. So I kind of like how they're doing it there. How are they going to implement the switching of the hood? Yeah, it looks like it's just separated right there. It could probably pop off. Oh, God, it looks great. It really does look great. Absolute Batman. There's that Batman Beyond. Looks a little nicer. Again, I'll admit that this Joker head sculpt, in terms of fidelity, does look a little nicer in this photo. But I think there's a little bit too much red smeared on the face. It's covering up a little bit too much of this bottom part. And the same critiques that I had before. I think it's a little too bulky. I think he has to be a little slimmed down. Pattinson, not bad, but it kind of needs a little bit of work on the unmasked head sculpt. And the chin on the cowled head sculpt doesn't really look too much like Pattinson. It kind of looks a little more like the stunt double. Needs to be a little bit more chiseled here. A prototype of Azrael. Not the biggest Azrael fan, but it looks like maybe, again, this could be like a good flex work to show how they do sculpting and detail-wise. Even Spicy Side Dog is like, I don't know who made this pic, but I really appreciate how fast people can make the comparison. People that probably weren't trying to fall asleep or didn't have anything else going on, but somebody already put a graphic together here between the counterparts from UPF to InArt, and I think I might have said this before, but I think InArt might be doing a better Pattinson based on this updated look of the cowl, where I'm like, yeah, the face sculpt could use some work. So off of the first one, I'll say that actually InArt might get the Pattinson and has it. A little conflicted on the you know what? I think the InArt I might have to give even though Batflix showing at this event is my figure of the show. If we're just talking about these two here, between InArt and UPF Batflick, I'm going to have to say, because of one little bias, I'm going to have to give it to InArt. And the bias is that I actually did see the unarticulated but fully painted maquette prototype of the InArt 1/12 scale Batfleck at the San Diego Comic-Con offsite event last year. I have footage of it. I have footage and photos of it. And even through those photos, but even from witnessing it firsthand, it stopped me dead in my tracks. Not only Batfleck, but also the Cavill Superman from BVS in 1/12. The fact that they were able to nail those likenesses like that in 1/12, and on top of that, the body's got some slightly better proportions and better lining on that, like I said, on that prototype. Guys, I mean, look at that. All they have to do is just put in the articulation, and that's almost a mini Hot Toys. These photos right here. Look at that. And then even the Cavill Superman. So, going back to this post, where'd it go? This one. In art kind of gets 2 out of 3. The Batfleck, even though Batfleck was my top showing of everything that UPF showed off at the event, if we disregard the rest of the event and just look at this direct comparison, I would say In Art's got the Pattinson and the Batfleck. But personally, UPF has the absolute Batman. Because I gotta be honest, I don't like this overly done, overly busy, and slightly strange and off-kilter look that InArt's going for. Because InArt's tackling the absolute Batman the same way that they're tackling they tackled the Red Death and the Batman Who Laughs, where they're taking their looks and just kind of over stylizing them to where they're technically not comic book accurate, but they're just going for like this very unique style. And at that point, it becomes subjective. If you like that look, go for it. And that's why here, there's no right or wrong. If you like the InArt look, go for the InArt look. But personally, when it comes to Absolute Batman, I'm looking at those two and I'm like, actually, UPF's got this one. So first two InArt for me, first two InArt, but then Absolute Batman goes to UPF. But that's me. What do you guys think?